Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Welcome back to the Travelers Podcast. I'm Brother Ali. This episode is extremely exciting for me. When I initially had the idea to do this podcast, it's because I have these incredible teachers, friends, companions, people that I just share life with and have these amazing conversations with. And I really wanted to share them. Because I benefit from so much from them. And I just think that it's a side of people that I'm really fortunate to be able to see that I think others would be able to benefit from as well. I think it would contribute to the beauty, the connection, the heart level bonding that really is so needed between people. There's a lot to disagree about. You know, I'm certainly no stranger to being outspoken when I believe in things. Also, along with that, though, I think that recognizing each other's humanity is extremely important. And that's why this is the Travelers Podcast. We're co-travelers on the journey of life. Some people have been given a certain assignment and a certain blessing to be able to lead and light the way for others. When I had the idea to do this podcast, there's three people that I'm like, I have to get this one, and this one. And one of the main ones was my guest today, one of the most unique human beings that I've been blessed to know, the great legendary Dr. Cornel West. What do you say about Dr. West? Dr. West is a public intellectual. He's a philosopher. He's a teacher. He is an author. He's written over 20 books, and I think he edited another 15. Most notably, I would say probably his great work, Race Matters. He also wrote a memoir that was extremely important to me, and this is where Dr. West actually comes into my life, when he wrote his memoir called Brother West, Living and Loving Out Loud. I knew that's when I knew that, like, he went from being somebody that I loved and admired to somebody that I had to know. Dr. West is in The Matrix. He showed up on 30 Rock. He's got some classic moments on the Bill Maher show. There's one where Dr. West and Yasin Bey, Mos Def, are on Bill Maher. It's one of the most amazing moments in TV history to me. Yasin Bey is another one that I hope we can have on this podcast. There's a lot of people that I appreciate, either their music or their teaching, or, I listen to teachers and lecturers the same way I listen to music. And to me, I love people that the way that they speak actually is music. And Dr. West is one of those people, and he talks like that all of the time. Like literally at 3 a.m, he talks like that when he's got his pajamas on. He talks like that all the time. But there's a lot of people that I appreciate, but then there's certain ones that when I come across them, there's something that happens in me that's like, no, I actually love this person. I'm part of them and they're part of me. And it's just this beautiful gift that I've had, that the Creator seems to always bring me together with those people. And it almost always is confirmed and it becomes a reality. It ends up becoming a manifest thing in the world. And Yasin Bey is one of those people. So maybe we'll ask Yasin to come on the podcast at some point. Also, one of the most unique people, the way he talks is music. Let me not get too sidetracked. Dr. West has done a lot of his intellectual and professorial work at Harvard and Princeton, but his real home is Union Theological Seminary in Harlem. So Dr. West just recently, really publicly, left Harvard because they wouldn't give him the opportunity to become tenured at Harvard. He's one of the most famous, world-renowned public intellectuals and philosophers, and Harvard wouldn't give him the opportunity to become tenured there. And he really believed that it was because of his outspoken history on behalf for Palestinians against the war crimes of the Israeli government. He really believes that that's why he didn't get that opportunity. And so he went back again to Union Theological Seminary. And then that's where he's saying that he's going to complete his professorial work. Dr. West has made albums. Dr. West has done, such incredible things. He's really, one of the things that he's done, and this is what public thought leaders really do. One of the great services that they do is that they take these massive concepts and they allow for people like me to use them as tools. They make them accessible. They make them digestible for people like me, you know what I'm saying, who didn't finish high school, much less, dealing with upper education. And when I first met Dr. West, he said, man, don't think that just because you haven't gone through school. He said, Brother Ali, you didn't go through college, but a college went through you. So amazing, man. So incredible. But Dr. West has these sayings, you know what I'm saying, that are just really amazing. One of them is, he quotes Plato. I think it's Plato. The unexamined life is unworth living. Unexamined life is unfit for the human. Wrestling with what does it mean to be a two-legged, featherless, linguistically blessed creature born between urine and feces, headed towards, will be buried in the ground to become the culinary delights of terrestrial worms. Very short time between womb and tomb. What kind of person are you going to be before you die? That's the intro. You know what I'm saying? That a lot of times he'll start out with that. You know what I'm saying? The same way that Run DMC would, you know what I'm saying? Jam Master Jay would come out and cut a certain thing, or Public Enemy had an intro. A lot of times that's his intro when he's speaking. But Dr. West said, we want to be truth tellers, and the condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. Justice is what love looks like in public. You know what I'm saying? I am who I am because somebody loved me. We could go on and on and on with all these amazing, I was born that night, but it wasn't last night. I don't know if that was his necessarily, but man, all of these incredible sayings. And so I'm really just grateful that we got a chance to sit down and talk to the great Cornel West. We're sponsored today by Zakat Foundation and by Roots Birthing Center and by Vice Jaron and by UPF. So stay here. Thank you so much for being here, and enjoy the episode. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But I'm this way and you're this way. Oh.
Can you turn your room 90 degrees, please? You use some of that Matrix magic. I saw you on the Matrix, man. Use that Matrix magic. Flip the whole world around.
Lord have mercy. But no, I want to be able to see my brother's face directly. I'm going to see whether I can put this like this.
Aha.
But it doesn't. Okay, I've never had it like this. It doesn't have a holder, but I guess that's cool. It may not need a holder. Can you see all right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
My God, look at God.
Lord, I'm telling you, brother, that's mighty God working other miracles. I'm a walking miracle. I know. I'm knocking it off, but we're going to work this thing out. We going to let nothing stand between me and Brother Ali. I tell you that right now, guys.
Oh, man.
That's just a fact of life. And if it falls, you just know that the devil intervened. I'll put it right back. How's your loved ones, man?
Everybody's well. Everybody's good. We love Istanbul.
Wow. No, I've been there. I mean, I used to go to Turkey every summer to see my daughter, So
did you get your suits made in Turkey, or was it Pakistan?
No, she did little suits. I don't know where I got it. I think it's some little brother up in Harlem or something.
Not Dapper Dan. Can we get Dapper Dan to make you a to make you a joint?
Oh, Dapper Dan, you funny though, brother. I don't even know the name of the cat because it's not even a special cat. It's just a little store that I went to and grabbed 3 suits years ago, and one of them gone. I got 2 left, but they're in good shape though.
So, there's this moment that so many people have, and in the Islamic tradition, when we study like these great figures, and before you read their great book, you start with their biography, because we are who we are because somebody loved us, right? So you start with their biography, and what you see with all these people is that they have, they're from a stream of amazing, capable practitioners, but they become noteworthy, and almost every single one of them met somebody noteworthy that they laid eyes on, that they breathed air with them, they looked into each other's eyes, there was the human touch. And so for Dave Chappelle met Muhammad Ali when he was a little boy. And there's a photo of it. And he said, I'm going to be famous. When he was a little boy, I'm going to be famous, and I'm going to be like as best as I can, like Muhammad Ali. Kendrick Lamar, when he was a little boy in Compton, saw Tupac and Dr. Dre filming a video out in the street. And he said, that's what I'm going to be. For me, it was 1990 or 91. I was 13. My favorite artist in the world was KRS-One.
KRS-One.
And he came through University of Michigan, and he gave a lecture. And I was 13, like I said, and I already was rhyming. I was already, an artist. But I saw him, and I saw him giving this lecture, and it was clear as day to me, this is what I am. And I asked a question, and he brought me on stage there, and I have a photo of it. And
I know what that question was too. I know what that question was, brother. Now you tell me if I'm wrong, because you asked him about his religion, and he told you to read the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Yes, sir. And that was the first.
Is that right?
Yes, sir. 100%. And that's the book that changed my life. But what I learned later is that you are the one that initiated that lecture tour, because you invited him to Harvard. That was his first big lecture. And though that lecture, and also the one that Kwame Ture gave, those two are all throughout that album. So I met him because of your beginning, and so I was your insight in bringing him, and then that kicked off the lecture tour.
Isn't that something, man?
So I'm wondering,
are we able to record all this right now?
We've been recording the whole time.
No, that's cool. That's cool.
Been recording the whole time.
We just come right on in, because I just love your flow.
You remember when I came to your office? You remember we recorded our whole conversation for like an hour and a half. I have the whole thing.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing about it, though, man, is that you got to be not just one of the most courageous, but one of the most wisest persons of your generation. It's incredible to me how you have been able to take in so much. And it's not like a sponge, because you are creatively responding. So you end up with your own wisdom, your own insight. But how, in fact, you could have the kind of wisdom. When we met then, and that was Letter to My Countrymen, right? That's 2012. That came out, see?
Yes, sir.
And it's like, whew, Lord, because I was telling my brother Cliff West, we did our albums together, and he produced all of them, wrote so much of the music, and he just thinks the world of you. And he said, man, he said that Uncle Sam, goddamn, is one of the most powerful things I've ever heard, brother. I said, but it got that KRS quality to it, and you could just feel the tradition from KRS-One to you, and the fact that there's really bodily, corporally, flesh connection between you and that particular genius from the Bronx, man. So you got the genius from Minneapolis, the genius from the Bronx. I mean, different generations in terms of, he is slightly, if you 47 now, are you 47 now?
I'm 44, but who's counting?
No, you 44. How old would he be now?
KRS he was 1965. KRS was
he
born
would
in 65.
Be like 57. Okay. So it'd be like 12, 13 year difference. About 12, 13.
That's about a generation.
Yeah, and that's a whole lot of time in terms of music, but half a generation in terms of 30 years. But see that continuity, that influence, and then the way you just take it on your own, man. Wow, but that's a beautiful thing. No, because KRS-One used to come to my class. He and I did a number of lectures together, University of New Hampshire and other places. And when his book came out, you remember he was kind enough to put out that CD where he had me on there too, kind of introducing him. And I said, man, this is one of the greatest honors of my life. That's like introducing Shirley Caesar, Curtis Mayfield, David Ruffin or something.
I wonder what was like that moment where you physically see, so like the people that are considered the companions of the Prophet Muhammad is because they saw him with their eyes while believing in him. So if somebody saw him with their eyes and they didn't believe, but if somebody saw them with their physical eye, and I wonder about you in 1963 seeing Dr. King with your parents
Yeah.
at
Oh Lord, boy,
Sacramento
you so right
Memorial.
about that, man. I can see him right now.
Mm.
Me sitting in the audience, with Mom, Dad, Cliff. I can see him right now on the stage, packed, nothing but black people, and him just giving himself, emptying himself right there in front of that lectern, man. Isn't that something? And that's like you say. See, I was 10. I'm 68. That's 58 years ago, man. Just like yesterday. Now it's true that I didn't say to myself that I was necessarily going to be like him. I still want to be James Brown. I want to be Willie Mays. I mean, that was my whole world was
Well, didn't somebody
athletics.
tell you when you were young that you looked like Smokey Robinson?
It's an exact. I say I want to be like James and Willie. That's basically.
You said,
It's just
"Quiet
I'm doing.
storm blowing."
That's it. All tracks of my tears.
Mm-hmm.
People say I'm the life of the party, 'cause I tell a joke or two. Now see, even though Smokey be way up there with his falsetto,
Yeah.
but that was my life. Really, it didn't hit me really until Martin was shot, though, man. I never forget. I was, running track. My brother, one of the greatest track stars of the 20th century. I was decent with my city records and things. But we had just had a track meet that Thursday, man, running against Sac High. Somebody told us Martin was shot, and I said to myself, what am I doing with my life, man? I'm running and running and running and hitting
Allah,
tapes and things. And this brother's got bullets coming at him.
Allah, Allah.
So I said, from now on, that's the legacy that I'm tied to right there. And that was early on, man. I tried to be faithful and will intend to be faithful unto death. But it's that kind of, you're right, it's that kind of connection at a deep spiritual level. And I love the way you always couch it in terms of the spiritual, because people need to understand it's not primarily political.
Mm-hmm.
It's a calling. See, but your relation to KRS-One, that's a calling. And the calling is vertical as well as horizontal.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. Just as what love looks like in public, and
That's
and,
right.
and in private, it's
That
intimacy, tenderness. Yeah.
That's it. That's it, though, brother. That's it. It's a militant gentleness, a subversive sweetness, and a radical tenderness. That's part of the radical love. That's part of the radical justice.
Mm-hmm.
So you could critique the empire, critique predatory capitalism, critique all the various forms of any ideology, losing sight of humanity, patriarchy, homophobia, transphobia, whatever it is, in the name of an almighty God who loves us because each one of us have a sanctity in light of the fact that we're created in God's image.
Mm-hmm.
But that also means on the horizontal, micro-social level, a tenderness, man.
Mm-hmm.
And a gentleness, a kindness, a generosity, a grin, a hug, a touch of encouragement and empowerment. And that matters. It's not just fundamental transformation of the structures. No, the people who do that have to be tender people, because if they're not tender, their souls are not intact. As soon as the revolution is over, they're going to reproduce a new structure of domination,
Yes,
a new
sir.
structure of oppression, We've seen it over and over again in human history, man.
My God.
Very much so. And to find the joy in doing that. See, what's beautiful about you, man, shoot, I see you, doing powerful things that you do, man. You got that smile, man. The flow comes from a joy. Because if you're not finding joy in your calling, then you ain't going to be a long distance runner. You ain't going to be a marathoner. You're going to be a sprinter. Next thing you know, you're going to shift your lifestyle. People are going to be doing something else. You just go with the breeze, go with the dominant tendencies of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But when you got that calling, Allah places a hand, you got an anointment. Be true for life.
Yes, sir. You know,
Integrity for life.
There's one of the great, you know, we have this amazing hadith tradition of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. One of the most well-preserved accounts of a human life, if not the most, is the Prophet Muhammad. And, you know, and he smiled and he cried and he wept and he mourned and he was joyful and all of that. And, you know, so we have these accounts that are not his words, but they're the words of God. But they're not in the Quran because they're given specifically to him. You know, the Quran is revealed to his heart, not to his brain, but it's revealed to his heart. But one of these, they call them the Hadith Qudsi, and they're like these really special sayings that are in God's words, but he gives them to the Prophet Muhammad to give to us. He said, "My servant doesn't draw near to me with anything greater than what I've made an obligation for them. And then my servant draws nearer to me with the things that are beyond that." So the things that are just beloved by God, but they're not necessarily obligations. He says, "My servant does that until the point that I love him. And then I become the eyes with which he sees, the ears with which he hears, the hand with which he strikes, the heart with which he intuits, the foot with which he steps." So love is what changes the whole thing. You know, that there's a spiritual wayfaring of like going through the rituals and things like that to get closer. But at the point that love comes in, it takes over the whole thing. And then the person begins to act as a representative of God in creation.
Ooh, yes.
And I remember the first time we met, it was just such, I will never forget that day. It's one of the greatest memories of my life. And I got to meet Dr. James Cone, may he rest in peace. And that was really huge. And we went out for dinner with James Cone and the brother who wrote the Fall of the Empire books, Chris Hedges.
Brother Chris himself. Yeah, just talk to Chris. Just talk to him. Love that brother.
Oh, he's amazing. He's amazing. One of the most courageous. Yeah, he's not a comedian.
Like he's a serious brother.
Oh man, his stuff will just have you be like, it's all a big nothing. Fall of the empire, the fall of the American empire, decreasing decay into oblivion. Just like, but
well, you know, he's been ordained a Presbyterian minister now.
He did. I remember he got all the way there in Boston, but then he didn't actually become ordained.
Yeah, exactly. No, he followed through. He had Cone give the sermon, and I gave the non-sermon speech at the church. He is a bona fide Presbyterian clergyman,
like his father, right?
You know, that's exactly right.
Yeah, his father opposed racism. His father opposed segregation. His father told the truth too.
That's exactly right. Indeed. No, it was a grand moment actually to see Brother Chris do it, because he had gone to Harvard Divinity School, you know, and had been deeply influenced by some great prophetic figures. But he went off, you know, into journalism and so forth. And I tell folk now, you know, journalism for the most part, the American empire is dead. Mm-hmm. So Brother Chris had to become something beyond a journalist, which was an outright prophetic intellectual who bears witness as a historian, as a thinker, as a sociologist, and so forth. And to this day, you know, he and Cone had the best friendships. We had gone to see Mumia Abu-Jamal together and so forth. And he spoke at Cone's funeral, like myself. He spoke at Cone's funeral. Cone said he only wanted 3 folk to speak, and 2 of them were Brother Chris and myself. But brother, we had a time with you. Oh, we had a good time with you.
You know, one of the things that you talk about, so that at that meeting, you and I felt like we connected instantly. And you asked me a question because I said, you know, I grew up feeling like I had no home in the world, in my white family and also in the white world, until black people basically took me in, adopted me, cared for me, loved me from the time I was very, very small. And now I'm in this position where a lot of my fans, my listeners, are European American, Caucasian, white body, however you want to say it. And you said to me, in order to lead the people, you have to love the people. And you asked me, do you love them? And that's a question that really touched me to my core. You're talking about Socratic questioning. Like, that's something that really, because I had to really sit with that, you know. And years later, I ended up connecting with a Muslim American scholar who comes from, he was raised in Kansas and Georgia, who's a white man in his 70s, and his name is Dr. Omar Farouk Abdullah.
God bless him. God bless him.
Yeah, and he became like a spiritual father to me. And
Wow.
I would say that it's through loving him, you know. And his teachers have been African, and he lived with them in their homes and things like this. And I think that really, you know, that's been a relationship for me that now it's an unequivocal yes. Now it's an unequivocal yes. I go through Kansas, and I started by saying I will never say a thing about white people that I wouldn't say about Dr. Omar's mother. And I wouldn't say about him and about his. Like, I would never say anything like that again. You know, and he would say, he has a lot of the same feelings that I have, you know.
Right.
But that was such a transformative question for me. It was like, do you love the people that you're talking to? Because you said, you know, you can do all the preaching and rapping and teaching and praying, but until you love that, in order to save the people, you have to serve the people. In order to lead the people, you have to love the people.
Yes. But you know, every genuine love always has a dimension of hatred. It's just that the object of hate is not the persons themselves. Mm-hmm. You see, you can't love people and not hate the fact that they're being treated unjustly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You can't love the brother from Kansas without hating the fact that if somebody's messing with him. Mm-hmm. So it's really the action, it's the deed, it's the structures, it's the institutions, it's the particular scars and bruises that you hate. Or another way of putting it is, you know, you hate the sin and still try to love the sinner. Mm-hmm. Or you hate the injustice and still try to keep track of the humanity of those who are perpetuating the injustice, because there's a civil war taking place on the battlefield of all of our hearts and souls.
Yes, sir.
There's no doubt about that.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? So that when you're talking about hounds of hell, greed, hatred, hypocrisy, fear, that's not just in the oppressor. That's in every human being.
Yes, sir.
But there's still such a thing as an oppressor and an oppressed. I ain't no doubt about that, because the two sets of human beings mediated by structures that are oppressing one over the other. Mm-hmm. But that battlefield that's taking place is one that goes all the way through. And you remember Dostoevsky's definition of hell in the Brothers Karamazov. He said, "What is hell?" says the old great Zosima, who was the old holy fool, the saint, you know, the holy saint in that rich Russian Orthodox tradition. And he says, the hell is those who suffer from the inability to love, the incapacity to love. Mm-hmm. See, that's Dostoevsky's Russian version of it. Mm-hmm. Very deep formulation of it. What's the flip side with Love Supreme of Coltrane? It's the hatred of oppression on the one hand, but it's also the recognition that if all you have is just the hatred of either person or the effects of the actions, then you don't have enough. Mm-hmm. You got what's understandable, but you don't have what is desirable. You got to have a positive force, love and mercy. And of course, I mean, Islamic brothers and sisters, when you start talking about mercy, man, even we Christians got to just bow down and say, yeah, we understand y'all done took this thing in a deep way, because mercy is something that goes far beyond justice. I mean, our Jewish brothers and sisters, with that powerful Hebrew scripture that changed so much of the spiritual life of the species, you know, the hesed, that loving kindness that spread to orphan and widow and oppressed and so forth and so on, you see. Mm-hmm. There's justice you shall do. Absolutely, absolutely. And they got powerful references of mercy there, but I tell you, the Islamic tradition, the prophetic Islamic tradition, we're talking about mercifulness and mercy. just thickens it out in a very, very rich way.
Well, grace and mercy are they twin brothers, or are they, are they, grace and mercy are hand in hand.
They go hand in hand. They go hand in hand.
With that fight you're talking about, that's sir.
No, people don't talk about them as much as they should, though, man.
Grace. Yeah, grace and mercy. That fight you're talking about on the inner level that's the real meaning of the J word, jihad. That the people went with the Prophet Muhammad, and they're fighting on the battlefield against oppressors, and then they leave. And as they're leaving, and they were victorious, and as they're leaving, the Prophet Muhammad says, we're leaving the little jihad to the big jihad, which is so that the inner Moses is always defeating the inner Pharaoh. And so that the spirit is always defeating the ego. I want to ask, one of the things I've always wanted to ask you is, so in standing up and speaking for the oppressed, sometimes we're the oppressed, and like we have to speak up for ourselves. And oftentimes there's a personal dimension. So when I think about, for example, like, you just recently very publicly left Harvard because they wouldn't, you're one of the most renowned and beloved public philosophers, intellectual, spiritual figures of our time. And for my money, you're you're number one. And they wouldn't even consider your tenure. But then also there's an element with, we know that you campaigned for Obama, you did dozens of events for him, and you were very clear with him that I'm going to break dance at your inauguration, and then the next day I'm going to be on your head, sir. And then of course there's the personal insult where you and mom go out to DC and you can't even get a ticket after doing all of that. And then, so when there's this mixture of a truth that needs to be spoken because of that prophetic fire, but there's also a personal element that the ego is like, the ego loves that part. You know what I mean? Yeah. I wonder, how do you differentiate so that you can be a marksman in speaking on behalf of the truth without the ego trying to pollute it?
Yeah, that's a powerful question, though, brother. And I know you feel the same thing, on the stage as the great artist and performer that you are. That you got all that coming at you, all the adulation and the applause and standing ovation, and yet saying to yourself, I know I'm still a cracked vessel. I know I still come up short.
Two-legged featherless. Two-legged featherless, linguistically conscious creature born between urine and feces.
That's it.
Yes, absolutely in tune with the funk, brother.
Keeping the funk real. Yeah. That's absolutely. So both of us, have this challenge, really. But for me, in my own case, it was a matter of first always beginning with piety. And piety is the virtuous acknowledgement of the sources of good, the gifts in our lives we know we don't deserve. That begins with mom, dad, begins with my loved ones, begins with my teachers, begins with access to a whole set of traditions. I can listen to Louis Armstrong, Billie Holiday, and Curtis Mayfield. I know I don't deserve that, man. And it's not just the skin pigmentation, because they got a lot of black gangsters and thugs out there. It's spiritual formation and ethical cultivation in light of a struggle against white supremacy. And that's why it's not just black people. It includes all of those who have undergone that kind of spiritual formation, ethical cultivation. So that, for example, you learn so much from a KRS-One. KRS-One learns so much from you. You know what I mean? Eminem learned from Dr. Dre. Dre learning from Eminem. It goes. It's a human thing at that deepest level. But in terms of the Obama situation, for me, what I insisted on, and what people usually overlook, but it's very important to me, that it's never a question of being called just to speak truth to power. You're also speaking truth to the relatively powerless. And you're also speaking truth to yourself and you're trying to make your truth itself a power, tied to a higher power. So I insisted in my critiques of Obama on Wall Street capitulation. Drones dropped on precious folk in Somalia and Pakistan and Afghanistan and so forth. Surveillance state, national security expansion, crushing whistleblowers like Snowden and Manning and Assange and others. I insisted on going to black communities and saying, I'm trying to speak the truth to you all. It's just not a matter of speaking truth to Wall Street and the Pentagon and Silicon Valley and Harvard. Yeah, I'm doing that. I try to do that. But I'm going into the hood. I'm going into where Obama's supposed to be so loved and overwhelmingly almost worshipped and so forth. And I'm saying, I want to shatter that idolatry. And that's where you get in trouble. So then I had to speak truth to myself and say, okay, I proceed with piety. Piety is gratitude. This begins with a note of gratitude. I'm thankful for all the forces of good in my life, all the grace and gifts in my life, so that the gratitude in your soul tries to become so strong that it doesn't allow a lot of space for the ego to operate. Now, the ego is going to operate. I mean, I got gangster proclivities. Ain't no doubt about that. I'm a redeemed sinner with gangster proclivities.
Miss Yang arm got a memory of that?
You remember that? You can't lie. Pow! So, I'm wrong. 2 left shoes. I know I'm wrong. And sometimes you can get too much pleasure in being wrong. That's part of the gratuitous pleasures of sin and evil and violence that we have to fight. But in the end, the witness that we're trying to bear, and that is the bottom line. See, the bottom line is allowing God to use us in such a way that God's love might break through our flesh so that people can see it. That's what Fannie Lou Hamer said. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. I'm going to a new song by Bootsy this summer, called Stars. Stars not in the sky. They shine in our lives. And we become stars on the stage to do what? Not to bring the spectacle to us, but to shine, so that divine love can be discerned in our lives, our artistry, our smiles, our attempts to reach out to the audience, the crafts, the levels of craft that we put into the making of the music, so that it can touch people's hearts, minds, and souls and bodies and try to push them in positive direction. And that's the kind of thing that, you've heard from your very, very beginning, going back even before the Undisputed Truth, man. I mean, your whole corpus has been these collections of high quality creative expressions, so that people could see a love working in you that's bigger than you, even as you bring some fun, you bring the folk, you bring the smiles, you bring the joy and the agony, and the anguish, walking away. Hey, brother man, working this thing through. There's some pain up in there. You know what I mean? There's some anguish there. I say, yeah, that's my brother. That's my artistic brother, Muhammad Ali, love warrior. Brother Ali, I should say. I know Muhammad Ali is the model, but brother Ali. I know the close relation you got, Muhammad. I spoke to his grandson yesterday, Jacob.
Is that right?
Jacob's a beautiful brother, just graduated from Harvard, and he's thinking of working actually with the sister from Minneapolis, the Muslim sister.
Ilhan.
Yes.
Excuse me, Senator Ilhan Omar. Yeah, she's going to come on our show, inshallah. Yeah.
Is that right?
We'll talk to her, and we're going to talk to Brother Keith. Keith is my old friend. Keith Ellison is my old friend.
Oh, I was just with Keith for Nina Turner's campaign. We spent the whole 4 days together, the last 4 days of the campaign together.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but my career started because a dear friend of mine, a Muslim brother, who's one of those, there's those very strict Muslim brothers. Yes, brother.
Right. Yes.
Salam, like one of those brothers.
Not a whole lot of improvisation and
Right, right,
syncopation.
right, right. Very like, you know what I mean? It's like if morning prayer is at 5 o'clock, this brother is almost done by 4:59. You know, that type of
Oh
thing.
Lord,
And the
I
police in
hate.
Minneapolis pulled him over and accused him of drunk driving. He didn't even drink coffee at this point. And
Wow.
they pulled him out of the car. They beat him up. They pulled his wife out of the car. A man searched her. Like, this is a woman who wears the scarf and the things. And at this point, I was the assistant imam at the mosque. And Brother Keith Ellison, now Attorney General Keith Ellison, was an attorney at this time that was doing cases pro bono and things like that. And he represented our brother in a case against the Minneapolis Police Department. And he won some money. And that money is what I used to make my demo tape. So he gave me a
It's,
portion of that, yeah.
what a story, man. I didn't know that you and Brother Keith had that connection.
Oh, we go way back. Yeah, I've known Keith a long
Isn't
time.
that?
Of all the people that I've known that said they're going to change the system from the inside, he's the one that I believe.
Well, no, he is the person of integrity on the inside who's been most consistent. There's no doubt about that.
And he doesn't have any need for, when you talk about the battle between the soul and the ego, you know, and so you got the secret, and then you got the soul, and then you got the intellect and the heart, and then the ego at the bottom. That's how the Sufis describe the inside, the internal makings of the human being. And Keith has no desire for fame. He has no desire for money. Keith still drives the same busted up car. Like, there's time, like, Keith has no need for trying to be sexy and cool. Keith has no need for being in control or telling anybody else what to do, being like having power. He has no need for any of those things. He's there because he's there to do the work that he believes that
He's
God.
there to serve.
Yes, sir.
He's there to serve.
And I haven't always agreed with everything or understood everything, but I always know that the decisions he makes are because he thinks that is the right thing to do.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's what integrity is. Integrity is not ideological consistency. It's not political consistency. It's making practical, wise decisions that sometimes have elements of compromise, so it's open to, different interpretations and argument and disagreement and so forth. But you know that he's on the love train and he's on the integrity train. Back when I saw him, I said, "Man, how was your mother doing?" He said, "Oh, Brother West, she passed." When we were at the Bernie Sanders debate, and, of course, I salute your support, courageous supporter, Brother Bernie. You're one of the few of the great artists in the American Empire who had the courage to come forward. We tried to get Kendrick actually to come forward, Kendrick Lamar, and his people were very much for it, but I think in the end they backed off, and I have the greatest respect for the genius of Kendrick, but he didn't come through for Bernie the way you
Chuck D
did.
did. Well, Chuck did too. Chuck is my sheikh. Like, he's my real, like, mentor of music. So I interacted with KRS, and then Rakim took me and Brother Brendan on tour when we were just getting started. Before Undisputed Truth, Rakim took us on tour for a year. But Chuck D is, that's my, like, day to day. That's who I call. I ask his permission for things. Like, that's the one that he came out for
the
Bernie.
greatest prophetic figures in the history of American music. I'm talking about music of any genre, let alone hip hop. Now, with Rakim, you better know about my interviews with him, man. He's the John Coltrane of hip hop, man. Ain't nobody like that brother.
And we have the same favorite Rakim song, me and you.
Lord.
I ain't no joke, right? That's your.
Lord have mercy. In fact, it's very interesting. I speak to a lot of Muslim groups now, and I always tell them, I say, it's a beautiful thing to be a black man come out of a great tradition of a great black people whose greatest freedom fighter was a Muslim named Malcolm X, whose greatest athlete was a Muhammad Ali, and whose greatest hip-hop artist is a Muslim, Rakim. And people say, "Well, hey, Brother West, what happened to the Christians?" I say, "Well, we Christians, we got Mahalia Jackson and Aretha and things. We got something for you now. It ain't like we ain't got nobody over here, Martin King and so forth. But when it comes to the highest level, you see, Rakim hip hop, Muhammad Ali athlete, and Malcolm. And a lot of people say, well, Martin, but no, Malcolm is cutting against things that even Martin, up until maybe the end, but even Martin wasn't cutting against. And Malcolm was honest, even when he's wrong. Even when he says the white folk are devils, that's wrong. We know white folks not devils. We know many of them got devilish behavior, but that's true for all of them. But when he believes it, he says it. See, that's what integrity is. You say what you mean and mean what you say. Because all of us are saying some things that false. Now, he said things that false that went, was highly public. But there's certain things I believe that's false. There's got to be certain things you believe that's false. Everything we say not true. But do we hold to it? Do we really say what we mean and mean what we say? Malcolm was able to do that. Probably when he was a gangster in the street. That's where he was. Little Red, he probably said, yeah, man, that's Little Red, man. He just for real. That's why he get beat up all the time. That's why he get in trouble.
West Indian Archie trying to take his head off and all that stuff.
Exactly. You know that great classic Alex Haley himself, man. Oh, when you remember the moment in the text where he can't dance, he learns how to dance, and he gets out there and dances, and even Duke has to bow to him.
Yeah.
Now, can you imagine that moment in the history of American culture? Duke Ellington bowing to Malcolm Little in the club.
Well, then you know that what I heard is that when Malcolm was Detroit Red, he was a dishwasher with another Red Fox.
Yeah,
so there was
right.
the two Reds, Detroit Red, and Malcolm wasn't from
Detroit.
Detroit.
Right there again. Two giants like that again, though, man.
So honored and grateful, and honestly really humbled to be partnering with Zakat Foundation, specifically their program to serve orphans around the world. Zakat, Z-A-K-A-T, is a pillar of the Islamic faith and in the life of Muslims. This is the part of our religion that deals with charity. And it's a universal reality that every spiritual tradition, all of the wisdom traditions, they're all going to say to us that if we want to grow, then we have to give. In the Islamic tradition, zakat specifically means that we try our best to make to earn our living in ways that are honorable and respectable and virtuous. But just the nature of money, just the nature of business, the nature of the human condition in the world that we live in means that money gets mixed up, and it's almost inevitable that we're going to end up taking money that probably came from sources that we don't like and agree with and feel good about. So we purify our income by giving back, and we purify our souls by giving back. We fight our greed and our connection to the material. The material can be in our hands, but we never want the material world to be in our heart. We want love, justice, truth, mercy, dignity. We want those things to be in our heart. So the world might be in our hand, but not in our heart. In any case, Zakat Foundation is one of these amazing global charities that have been doing their thing for decades. Specifically, we're partnering with my sister, Amna Mirza, has a project. She took over their project there to help orphans around the world. And what's super dope about what she's done so much, first of all, I want to say 100% of the proceeds go to orphans and their families. None of it pays anybody's salary. None of it covers overhead costs. None of it covers admin. 100%. If you donate to that project, 100% goes directly to the people that they serve. Another thing that's important to know is that they have people on the ground to make sure it's facilitated well and with dignity and with quality control. Another thing to know is that Zakat Foundation is a Muslim-led organization, but they don't only help Muslims and they don't proselytize. Our religious duty is to serve the human family, not to necessarily try to convert them. We do share our religion, but not in this project. In this project, because there's a lot of charities that they do good work, but they also, along with that, they're trying to convert you to whatever their platform is, whatever their program is. And that's not what Zakat Foundation does. One of the things that Amna did that's so dope, and she's kind of become a rock star of the world of philanthropy because of, and charitable giving and movements to benefit the dignity of humanity, is that, you know, it became just the natural order way of doing business in the world of orphan relief and care, that they started showing photos, and they'd be like, you know, write into us or go on our website. We show you these images and you get to select the orphan that you want to help, which is a beautiful thing because people are you know, they're having a heart connection and they're led and they're giving, and that's very, very beautiful. What Amna noticed that I think is really dope is that, you know, just because of the reality of colonialism, of white supremacy, of anti-blackness, she suspected, and when she looked into it, she found it to be the case, that lighter skinned, younger girls were going to be chosen more often if you show a picture of the children beforehand. And the people that were going to be served least and last were going to be youth that were a little older, boys, and black kids, black orphans. So what she said is, we're changing all of that. What she said to me on the call, and we talked about it, she's like, you know, this isn't Tinder. You don't swipe right or left based on, you know, who you like. You know what I'm saying? So she set the default setting is that, first of all, they don't share any pictures with people when you go to sponsor orphans there. It's $50 to sponsor an orphan. You don't get pictures ahead of time. The default setting is who's been on the list the longest and is in the most need, who has the most need. What they do allow people to do is select regions, because there are certain people that they want to give to Somalia, they want to give to Palestine, they want to give to, you know, a specific place. So she does allow them to do that. But the default setting when you just log on the website is who's in the most need. And what they've seen almost immediately is that people see that and they're like, oh, that's what I should be doing. That actually resonates with the heart the same way that seeing the picture of a kid does. And so they're like, oh, that's what I should do, is just give to the person in the most need. So they started doing that, and they saw it start to even out, which Amna, like, salute forever for that. Super dope. Zakat Foundation works with their orphan support program in 14 countries around the world, and their goal this year is to serve 10,000 orphans. And so go to zakat.org, zakat.org. Go to the specific area of their website that deals with the Orphan Project. Please support this. Please share it. Please follow, like, all of that good stuff, because this is for real dope work. One of the other things that I think is so great about their program is that for someone to be considered an orphan, it's not necessarily that that their entire family died. It could be just that one of their parents died or was killed or was, you know, and so they have one parent that's having a difficult time and is not able to support them. Sometimes that parent is dealing with mental health issues. Sometimes families are going through immense and intense trauma, the likes of which most of us are privileged enough to never even be able to comprehend. And so the help that they're doing, the work that they're doing is really profound. I know Amna, I've known her for years, and I'm just very honored to be in partnership with Zakat Foundation, zakat.org. This is a very personal one for me. We are in partnership with Roots Community Birth Center in North Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is, my home. Roots is one of the very few, it's a small handful of birthing centers, community birthing centers, that's owned and operated by Black women. So special shout out to Rebecca and her crew. Her team, there are people from all walks of life in her team, and also they serve people from all backgrounds and all groups. But there's something very, very special about this birthing center. I mentioned on the podcast on the last episode, but I have 4 kids. And I was blessed to be there for all of the, prenatal stuff and the birth. And I delivered some of my kids. It's a huge honor. I say that I'm blessed to be there because not everybody can. You know what I mean? And I was really fortunate. And we had a variety of experiences. We're talking about, the mothers of my children, my first wife, and then my current wife that I've been with for 18 years. They're Black women. And the healthcare system in America is it's one of the systems in America that suffers from extreme imbalance in the way that they serve people. There's a huge service gap, and so infant mortality, C-sections, the care that Black women get is profoundly deficient. I'll just put it like that. For example, when Black women talk about the pain that they're in, my current wife, so we had our first child together when we had just been married for a few years. And then almost 10 years later, we had 2 babies back to back. We went into the hospital, and this is a woman in her 30s who's given birth before. And she's saying, like, it's time. Like, I need to start pushing. Like, it's time. And this young, I don't even know if she was a nurse, but this woman is like, no, you just got here. Sometimes it's been a long time since your last baby, and da 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 da. And my wife is like, yo, I need to start pushing. So they finally checked her, and they realized, like, oh, you're fully dilated. The baby's gonna come. You know what I'm saying? And so they're rushing because the doctor's not even there because they didn't believe my wife. You know what I mean? And I'm looking at her, and she's like, it's time to push the baby out. And I was like, yo, I delivered the last one, push the baby out. You know what I'm saying? If we have to have this baby, just me and you in this waiting room, we'll just do it. You know what I mean? And this is a educated woman with a master's degree, and a therapist and a social worker, and she's having difficulty navigating this system. She almost had a baby in this lobby because of the fact that the people didn't believe her, and then just constantly running extra tests and constantly making her think like something's wrong with her and all of this stuff, man. So we had a variety of experiences, and it wasn't always good. And there's something really profound about walking into a place that's in the community. These people feel like family, energetically, physically, spatially, spiritually, in terms of the shared culture, the sensitivities, the sensibilities, even driving into the parking lot, walking into the door, looking at the website, the phone calls on the way in, and then the way that we were treated, the way that we were welcomed. We felt like we were at home. We felt like we were with family. It really felt like this is the way that our family members are supposed to be welcomed into the world. And it's something that I'm just so grateful for, and I'm really happy to be able to share, because it's too rare that these centers exist, and so this is just something that's really profoundly important. So I just wanted to let you all know about this. If you're in the area, I couldn't not recommend the service more highly. If you are listening right now, go to rootsbirthcenter.com, rootsbirthcenter.com. There's an area there where you can contribute, make a contribution, and share and help amplify. This is what I want to say. Part of what's so amazing about this project is that Rachel is somebody who comes from the same communities that we come from. There's activism and things like that, and all that is super dope. I went to jail doing that kind of stuff, organizing, activism, civil disobedience, the whole thing. I believe in all of that. Rachel actually said, I want to use my ability to contribute to the healing of my community, to create an institution, to do a lot of this thankless, tireless, not glamorous, not sexy, not fun work, to make sure that there's an institution in my community that can contribute to the healing and to fill in the gaps, to put some paint where it ain't, as they say, So very, very honored to be partnering with Roots Birth Center. Make sure to go there, check it out, give them some support, and help spread the word about something really beautiful. In celebration of the fact that we finally launched this podcast that I've been dreaming about for so long, and the fact that we're able to get back on the road again, we're doing a tour called the Travelers Tour. This tour will eventually be a world tour, inshallah. That's our goal. What we were able to get booked and what we're heading out on in March and April of this year, 2022, which is right around the corner, is the West Coast U.S. leg of the tour. That there's a few Midwest dates that are in there as well. But the tickets are on sale now. They're going fast. A lot of the places we're playing historically have sold out year after year, so maybe that'll happen this time. So go to brotherali.com and go to the events section, because you'll see all of the show information is there. You can buy tickets there. But another thing that I wanted to let you know is that we have VIP packages available. if you get the VIP package, you are able to come into the venue early. So, you know, the Travelers Tour is concerts, like I'm doing hip hop shows, like I've always done. But for this VIP experience, you come into the venue early. We do a small intimate musical performance for the people that are there. And then we go into a live podcast recording, basically, where, you know, I come out and we have an intimate conversation about things that are on my mind, things that I want to share. And then we do Q&A and dialogue. So much of what I love about going on tour and really touching and engaging and interacting with the people that listen to and support this music is that we just share so much stories and, you know, exploring life. You know, people ask me really tough questions, and sometimes people ask for advice, or they just share what they're going through. And I mean, you know, really, really profoundly inspirational stories of people that are going through or have been through tremendous hardships and have found a way to move on, you know, with style and a smile, with grace and dignity. And so these conversations I've been having for years. The same way that I'm talking to people like Cornel West, I want to also share the conversations that I've been having with you. So head to brotherali.com, go to the events section, get your tickets for the Travelers Tour, and also check out the VIP when we're in your city. So Autobiography of Malcolm X was the first book that really changed me. And that came from KRS. And KRS was on that lecture tour because of your belief in him and in us and in our generation and in our music. The second book that really changed me, especially as memoirs, is yours, Brother West, Living, Loving Out Loud.
Is that right?
Yeah, when I read that book, you know, I was in a deep spiritual funk. That probably was a low place spiritually. I had come out of, you know, being the assistant imam at the mosque, and then started touring, and that was the height of my career. Like I did, you know, the main stage at Coachella, and I was, you know, just bumping into Jay-Z and Beyonce and all this kind of stuff, and we played all the big festivals, but I was at a spiritual low. And when I was reading your book, it was over the summer of 2010, on the 4th of July, my father died of suicide. And you know, in your book, you start with a quote that I wrote to make sure I get it right. We find out who we are on our most profoundly human level when we stand before the dead bodies of our loved ones. You know, and in the Islamic tradition, when they die, we don't embalm them or send them to the government. We wash them with our hands, and we wrap them in two shrouds that look like the same shrouds that we wear when we're in Mecca. That's what we bury, and we wash them with our hands. So when our elders die, we wash their body, and then we lower them into the ground ourselves with our hands. We bury them. I put dirt on Wallace Muhammad. I didn't wash him, but I put dirt on Wallace Muhammad. But so when I read that line, you know, my mother died just a few years before that. And I have this memory of, and forgive me for saying this, I know this is new for you. So I'm gonna say something really real right now. But I have this memory of when my mother died a few years before that. My brother called me and he was like, you know, she passed. And I don't want to call the coroner until you get here. So I got to the house, and I had seen her earlier that day. I think I'm the last one she spoke to. And the coroner came, and he was just so rough and just so like, you know, he had this like plastic bag, and he just, right in front of me and my brother, just put her in this plastic bag and zipped it from the bottom to the top, and just like a zipper over her face, you know, and just put her in the back of the thing and drove away. And but you know, that's the reality of life. And I just I wonder, are you ready to talk about what you've been through in the last?
Well, no, the death of Mom, of course, still reverberates in every molecule of my body, every fiber of my existence. The most difficult thing I've ever had to do in the world is give the eulogy for both Dad and Mom. Those are the two most difficult things. Having gone through those and having done those, everything else is downhill. Everything else is downhill. Now, I think it's also true. I mean, you know, I think when my brother was almost gone, he actually Died for a while and bounced back, thank God. And he's strong as ever now. I'll never be one half of the human being he is, Clifton West.
The
But
second.
that's, no, he's third. He's
He's the
third.
third.
Dad was
So
junior.
then your son
Yeah,
is the
Dad was,
fourth. So your great
yeah, that's
grandfather
right.
in Tulsa, your grandfather in
That's
Tulsa, he's the senior, right?
that's right.
Okay. So then your
That's
father is second, your brother Cliff is the third, and then your son Cliff is the fourth.
that's
Amazing.
no, that's exactly right. And his son is Cornel. So
I didn't know that.
oh yeah, look, Cornel West, the son of Clifton West in Sacto, who's got his own illustrious career as an athlete and thing. But but I mean, that's those are the toughest moments, though, brother. And one of the things I tried to accent in the eulogy is First Thessalonians 5th chapter 17th through the 19th verses, where you pray unceasingly and you give thanks in all circumstances. And so I had to really accent the gratitude of having mom for 88 years, man. At least for me, for 68. She died at 88. I had her for 68 years. Could have been 8, could have been 18, could have been 28. And so for so many other people, they have 50, but they don't have the same high quality mom that I had. You know what I mean? And the deep love that I experienced, a love beyond description, no language can capture. And so, even given these tough moments, man, the death of your beloved mother and father, you think to yourself, "Who? How blessed I was." The gifts that I received that go far beyond anything I could ever deserve. And those are the kind of things that the world didn't give you and the world can't take away in terms of the precious memories. So then the question is, how do I fortify myself, keep on moving forward, and be true to the best of who she was? Put a smile on her from the grave. Give her move toward glory, you see. So that's one of the ways in which I try to confront those very difficult realities. And it's still new because, mom just passed a few months ago, man. Yeah, definitely. But you think, too, though, brother, James Ntume just passed, man. He was going to be the producer of our 4th album that we, You see, he's genius, man. Son of Jimmy Heath, man, and playing with Miles and Juicy Fruit, You, Me, and He, and You Know How to Love Me by Phyllis Hyman, the song for Stephanie Mills, You and I, Starlight that he wrote with Reggie Lucas, and then the political stuff that he did. He was named by Maulana Karenga and us
I didn't know that.
organization,
I didn't know
1969.
that.
Yeah, it's called Mantume means messenger. But he had joined the organization early on.
The US movement.
Very early on. Us movement, black nationalists and so forth. And then he did break, but he always had that stamp of being concerned about, the centrality of black people, black culture, and Maulana Karenga has become now, a towering public intellectual in his own right, still going strong here in Los Angeles. But nobody in Ntume's formation, coming out of the Heath family on the one hand, the Farming family on the other, then Maulana's us, then tied to Pan-Africanism, and he's traveling with Brother Akbar Muhammad, the Nation of Islam, all around the world. He never was a member of the nation, but he was very, very close in terms of being in solidarity with their anti-imperialist work in Africa and what have you. So that and he was on the radio. He did that show with Sharpton for almost 20 years, man. He was the political voice on the black radio station in New York City, pushing Sharpton, putting pressure on Sharpton, but they were in dialogue with each other every Sunday morning, man. That's James Ntume. That's James Ntume. Al Roberto, Slave Religion. I gave 5 eulogies in 1 week, man.
Bell Hooks. I mean, you lost Bell. I know Bell loved you, Doc. I know she loved you. I know she loved you. Somebody was asking her about you, and I was looking for the clip because I wanted to say, you may have seen it, but she really loved you, man.
No, we both loved each other. The Breaking Bread, we had first edition, and we redid it 20 years later. right there at her institute in Berea, you know. Desmond Tutu, you know, I traveled with him in South Africa, different funerals in South Africa. Then we taught together at Union Seminary in the 70s with Cone and others. But Al Roberto, Slave Religion, one of the greatest, he's the godfather really of black religious studies. I had to give the eulogy for him. Stanley Aronowitz, one of the great, probably the greatest organic intellectual of the trade union movement and beyond of the 20th century. He was my close brother. He also passed. And then Bob Moses, I gave a eulogy for him with Janet and the family. In fact, it was almost two eulogies the same weekend because you had Glenn Ford, probably the greatest black revolutionary journalist of his generation, founder of Black Agenda Report. He passed, and then Donald Schreiber, my former president of Union, passed. So all of these things, Greg Tate, I mean, it just keeps coming, man.
In Minneapolis, we had
Lonnie
three big ones.
Lonnie Guinier was my fellow student. You remember, her father was the first head of black studies at Harvard, Hewitt Guinier. She was at Harvard as a senior, and I was there as a freshman, and we were on the similar committees. And she just passed same day that Sidney Poitier did, you know. So it's just these losses, brother. Boom.
How is Mr. Belafonte?
Stronger than ever. We have a 95th birthday, March the 1st. Pretty soon. 95 years old. Strong as ever, man.
Just cool and smooth and beautiful.
Yes, exactly, man. Lord, did you ever get a chance to meet him? He would love you.
I still haven't. You tried one time to bring me to something that he was at, and I felt so bad. I had to leave town. But like when I say, like, I treat Chuck D like I treat my religious teachers. If he tells me to do something, I will do it. And he told me, one of the things when I first met him, he said, you're going to be gone a lot. You're going to be away from your family. But if you tell your family when you're going to leave and when you come home, and then you stick to that, then they'll know that your traveling is for them and that they're at least a part of your reason for why you're doing what you're doing. Ooh. And so one time you invited me to see Ravi Coltrane in New York. When I was touring with the Immortal Technique.
Jazz club. Yes.
And you invited me, and I felt so bad I had to turn you down. But I told my wife and kids I would be home on this day. So
no. Chuck D was right, and you did the right thing. I'm glad you mentioned Immortal Technique, though, man. He's another towering figure, man. Woo. Lord, how you talk about the kind of revolutionary fire that you and he have together, man.
Well, nobody's got fire like him. I mean, you talking about fire. I mean, that's the... Man, that guy.
Man, I tell you, just being around that brother, being on your album was a blessing, and being on his album was a blessing too.
Yeah, he's
indeed, he's strong.
So your mother was a great educator. The school was named after her, Irene B. West. Was she the first black teacher in Elk Grove?
Yes, she sure was. Taught first grade. See, we lived in, it's a Jim Crow residential pattern in Sacramento. You got Oak Park, where my church is, Shiloh Baptist Church. You got Del Paso Heights in the north, and you got Glen Elder. And we lived in Glen Elder. On the other side of Glen Elder was another town called Elk Grove, which was all vanilla, brother. All white, mainly rural brothers and sisters, white brothers and sisters. And Mom taught right on the other side of Glen Elder, which is Elk Grove. So she was the first black teacher over there. And it was, when she first started, man, you could imagine, it was a challenge, man. And Dad was deeply concerned. The church was deeply concerned. Shiloh, Reverend Cook, and Deacon Hinton, and Mrs. Ray, and others, and Mrs. Durham, and Mrs. Burton, folk on the street. Is Mom going to be all right?
They were still having Klan meetings at that time in Elk Grove.
Oh. It's true. That's very true, though.
I have a dear friend.
I tell you,
sir.
No, you go right ahead. No, yeah.
Well, I have dear friends that grew up between Sac and Oakland. It's a family. That's a black Muslim family called the Rashid family. Imam Enrique Rashid was an imam there for many years. He was a student of Wallace Muhammad. And then his daughter, Aida Rashid, went to Kennedy. And
is that right?
Yeah. And she knew Miss Irene. She knew your mom. And
really?
Yeah. And they just visited Istanbul. The father and 3 generations of their family just visited Istanbul, and we had them all at our house. And your mother had just passed, and we held her up and we prayed for her, and we were talking about her, and we were sending you a lot of love as well. And they said, you know, she was so tiny and petite, but her spirit was so big. And
that's exactly right.
You know, that she was so powerful, and she loved reading, and her main love was teaching people to read.
Teaching people to read. She taught Vacation Bible School every summer for almost 50 years. And the Shiloh, you know, is right there in the hood, in the black section, in the ghetto, we used to call. And so a lot of the kids in the summertime were not necessarily members of the church, but they'd come to Vacation Bible School. And so it's a beautiful thing, man. You could just walk the streets with mom through Old Park, and little kids come up, oh, Miss West, I remember you taught me how to read in Vacation Bible School. They 41 years old, man, 44 years old, 30, 38 years old. Miss West, we want to thank you so much for doing that. And it's that kind of thing. You see, that's what sets the standard.
So Aida Rashid is a dear sister of mine. She's one of those people that just holds community together, and she's probably a little younger than me. I would, you know, just for a couple years behind me, her and her husband.
About 41, 42.
Something like that. She said she'll never forget that Miss Irene taught her, if you can't be a highway, be a trail. If you can't be a sun, be a star. It isn't by size that you win or fail. Be the best whatever you are.
Yeah, that's what Mom used to say.
She carries that to this day. She rattled it off like it was from the Quran.
Exactly. That's exactly what Mom used to say. She'd say the same thing to us, same thing at Shiloh, same thing where she'd go. And it was something, they had a tribute to Mom, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago. The place was packed, man. Mom brought Shiloh. She brought the choir, man. You know what I mean? So you got the mass choir of Shiloh Baptist. Then you got all of these white brothers and sisters who she taught, driving up in their trucks with Trump signs and all this other right-wing stuff. And they get up there and they just bow to Mom. I just want to thank you for teaching me how to read. And you were just so kind to me. And you embraced, my family. We were living way out in the country, in the rural things, and everybody looking down on us and so on. And it's clear they didn't get the full memo, because they support Trump, neo-fascism and things. But they were not going to miss this thing for Miss Irene B. West. And so you got this huge gathering of all of these black folk and all of these white folk, a slice of them, not all of them, but a slice of them Trump people. And then, you got some serious leftists and revolutionaries all in the same room. And Mom sitting there right in the middle and people just standing up giving testimony. Man, it was beautiful, man. It was beautiful. It really was. But that's part of the gifts that I'm talking about, the great gifts, man. The great
There's
gifts.
a story I've always wanted to ask you about. So you mentioned your brother Cliff, and what a great track star he is. And that you also had so Jesse Owens came to your house for dinner. Yeah. And then Cliff, I don't know if this was after, in my mind it's always after, but then Cliff won a state championship, and he was invited to go, and your whole family went to go have dinner with the governor, which was Ronald Reagan at that time. And you all were talking, and then can you please tell us a pushback? Because I read it but I've never heard you tell the story. I just read it in the memoir.
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, Cliff won a state meet 409. As a junior, his best time was 437. So he was never in the running in the eyes of the establishment. And when he went into the meet, his best race was 421. Sections 416, wins a whole state 409. Then the Golden West, which is the best in the country. See, and he wins the Golden West, and that's where we meet Jesse Owens. Right before that, because he arrived for the Golden West meet, and we got Brother Hobhouse, Thomas Hobhouse, who was part of the group that sponsored the Golden West, was able to bring Jesse Owens, and we met him, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, when Clifford won the state meet just a week or two before, Reagan wanted to then provide this moment in which he would, salute somebody from Sacramento. And black folk winning the mile race, man. That's like being MVP of the National Hockey League, man.
Right.
A black MVP of the National Hockey League.
Right. It's supposed to only be sprints and short distances, and
that's exactly. We win in the 100 and the 220 in those days, 200 meter now. And yeah, Reagan shows up, man, and he talking about how supportive he is of all these different programs and things, But I said, well, the Black Panther Party, man, you really treated them basically like cockroaches, man. You're wrong as you can be. Jumps up and so forth. Because Reagan gonna be honest with himself. He think Black Panther Party, man, is some kind of terrorist group or something. And you say, no, that's part of our black freedom struggle. They targeted some conditions that you actually are promoting. So it was little tight moments there in terms of political exchange. But we tried to keep it on a spiritual level because it was a moment in which Cliff was being rightly elevated as the great, not just athlete, but human being that he is. But that tension was very, very real. Very much so. Very real indeed.
How old were you when that happened?
60s. That's 1968. So you keep in mind that Martin had just been shot in April. And you had
the Olympics, the fist at the Olympics.
Yeah, 14. I see the Olympics would have been later on that summer. And that was in August with the great John Carlos and Tommy Smith and company. So I would have been 14, man. I was 14 years old. My brother, born 1950, he would have been 17 because his birthday's in September, and that would have been in June. So he's 17 and I'm 14. And again, the impact of not just Brother Martin, but the overflow of love that was expressed for Martin in the form of rebellions in over 125 cities after his assassination, after his murder. That had shaken the foundations of the whole nation, man. And we hadn't even got Chicago, Democratic National Convention, with all of that protest that took place. We hadn't got to the murder of RFK yet either. That would happen in that June as well. So that it was quite a moment to be alive, man. Quite a moment to be alive. How old were you in 1968, though, bro?
I was born in 77. I was born a month before your son Cliff. Or not even a month, just a few days before Cliff.
Wow, so you still had 9 years to even make your appearance, huh?
I was still on the first side.
Wow. Boy, you sure been doing some good catch-up. I tell you that, man. People figure you've been here for the last 75 years giving the wisdom of your
my producer that I made most of my music with, his name is Anthony Jerome Davis, and we call him Ant. When I first met him, I was like 20, and he was like, you are an old man in a young person's body. He was like, you're going to have no problem once you get past, he said, you're just going to grow into it.
So right, though, man. But how did that happen that you were able to acquire so much wisdom and poise and confidence and courage so quick, man?
Well, it's a spiritual exercise to hold still when you're being complimented, especially by your heroes. So I just have to hold still during that time, when you say things like that. But I was loved and I was poured into. I mean that I am who I am because somebody loved me. I mean that's very true. And there's times where I think that, well, not even times, like I know that, how we're our parents are always nicer to company. Like when other kids come over, the parents are, and it's just like, who is this person? Who is this woman? Cutting the sandwiches in little shapes, and suddenly you can, use any towel you want, and you can sit on any couch, and who is this lady?
I thought that couch had that cover. You can't touch it. Come right on this.
So my grandma, that's the treatment I got. That's the treatment I
Isn't
got
that something?
from black people
Wow.
very specifically. And, you know, it's just, and it's something that I carry for my whole life, because, the people who were supposed to love me did their best, but they weren't going to be able to tell me specifically what I needed to feel a sense of somebodyness. And so my mother tried to, when I was a little kid, I was really, people were very cruel to me. And so we moved, and she tried to dye my hair blonde and get some glasses and things. And I had a deep depression, at that time. So and what I realized later is that she was trying to help me escape, ridicule, but she was actually, without her knowing, she didn't have the experience to know this, but she actually was helping me disguise myself to look more like the people, to be acceptable to the people that were. So when I was 6, 7 years old, I heard about Black is Beautiful. And like, we have to be acceptable to ourselves, and we have to be happy with what God gave us. And those people don't know who they are, and so they're looking for somebody to look down on. And those are all the things that gave me life. And so, I've just been on the receiving end of so much.
Wow. Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing is, man, is you give so much love, man. You give so much of yourself. You give so much of the realness that is inside of your soul. That's that kenosis that in many ways is shot through Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and I'm sure many other religious traditions too, this sense of just emptying yourself because you surrender to something bigger than you that allows you to then give authentically to others who are there with you. And doesn't get better than that though, brother. Doesn't get better than that.
The Travelers Podcast is brought to you by Vice Gerent, makers and manufacturers of fine tailored clothing. This is a dear friend of mine and a service that I've used a lot. It's something, honestly, that has just really enriched my life so much. My brother Usman, the tailor, Usman Aslam, we call him Usman the tailor in our circle in Chicago. Really, really beautiful brother who has dedicated his life to making fine clothing for men. A lot of what he does is suits. He's outfitted, major athletes, world-class athletes and entertainers, rappers, speakers, teachers, educators, community leaders, business people, and also just regular everyday people. He doesn't only do suits. He basically crafts each piece and each look and each feel for the person that he's working with. It really is a custom experience that starts with him just hanging out with you and vibing with you and getting a sense of you. And then he also measures you and things like that. But talking to you about, what is the intention that you want to bring into a room? How do you want to make people feel when you're with them? Having these kind of experiences and this like bespoke clothing thing, it's not about being a hipster. It's not about showing off for other people. It's not about being a narcissist or a diva. It's really about being intentional about the fact that, the same way that like you gotta eat. So if we're intentional about our food, then we can actually add a lot of meaning and beauty to our lives if we're intentional about what and how we prepare our food. The same is true with the environments, the way that we set up, rooms when we have a guest come over, the lighting, the smell, the ambiance. We also create that with the clothes that we wear. And so being intentional about that it's not just about showing off, and it's not just about like, having a case of the look at me's, but like really it's an opportunity to add meaning and beauty to our lives with something that we do every day. Also, that the clothes that you're getting are sourced from sustainable sources, you know what I'm saying? And that there's no sweatshops involved. There's no exploitation involved in the clothes we wear. I mean, how many days do we get up in our lives saying like, I'm going to make a difference in the world, and I want to be an agent of beauty and of positive change and of justice and of truth telling and of love and of mercy. You know, I want to be an agent of good out here in the world. And then we put on clothes that are made by slaves, people that are living these like horrible lives. You know what I'm saying? And so it really is a major transformation. It's a major like energetic shift. It's not just about the way that you look, but it's about the intention that we put into the way that we show up in the world. So head to Vice Gerent Official, follow them on social media. If you're in the Chicago area, set up an appointment. If not, I'm telling you, it's worth going there. The clothes do cost a little bit more per piece, but when you think about it over the course of the years that you wear clothes, I mean, when I moved to this country, when my family left America and moved to Turkey, I found that I had all of these clothes that I had bought and just all of this stuff, and I donated and gave away most of it. The stuff that I actually brought here was a really small amount. I brought one suitcase worth of stuff, and the main thing that I made sure to bring with me were the clothing that was made for me. And like I said, you spend a little bit more, but the idea is to be more intentional and to buy less, to have less things in the closet, but those things are intentional. Those things are made for you. Those things were made with the spirit, you know, and the energy that we want to bring into the world. So really happy to be joined by Vice Gerent. Travelers Podcast is brought to you by the great people at UPF, which is Unity Productions Foundation. Unity Productions is a collective of artists and creatives that do really amazing cultural and creative work. Their foundation, and specifically this project that they have called Unfold Your Own Myth. What they've done in this really super dope and powerful project is to bring together artists, creatives, writers, authors, poets, singers, speakers, people who understand that there's something really humanizing and empowering about telling our stories. You know, there's something amazing that happens when we acknowledge that exploring ourselves and expressing ourselves is important. It's an acknowledgement and a confirmation and an affirmation of our own humanity and of the reality that every human being has a story that deserves to be known and deserves to be shared. That not only is me exploring myself gonna do a lot for me, but there are people out in the world that me sharing what I've been through, the highs and joys and highs, lows, joys and woes, you know what I'm saying? All of the stuff of life, the same way we do on this podcast, the same way I do in my music. Not only is that therapeutic and cathartic for me, and it's humanizing for me, you know, but also there are people out there that will benefit from what I've been through, even if it just makes them know that they're not alone. And you know, on top of that, if there's wisdom that I've gleaned, or if there's lessons I'm able to share that I picked up along the way. So they get these people together that understand that, and they've created an online workshop that they offer to youth and to children around the world, especially people that are in extreme situations in their lives and in their countries and in the situation that they find themselves in. So these are people who might feel insignificant, but they're going through things that, like, if shared with people like you and I, who, because of the privilege that we enjoy, you know, we could never even imagine some of the nightmares that people are living through. And for some people, it's not a nightmare, it's their everyday reality. You know what I'm saying? So for them to share is so important for them, and it's so important for us. So this program, again, is called Unravel Your Own Myth. To support it, or if you work in community, if you work with youth, if you're a teacher, if you have any kind of community space, you can actually bring this workshop to the youth that you work with and that you serve. So head to upf.tv/unfold. upf.tv/unfold to get down with this beautiful movement of Unfold Your Own Myth. I really can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to do this podcast. It just really, it's something that comes from my heart. The intention is that it hopefully connects with your hearts, and that it's a healing and a humanizing force for us all. It's really important that throughout my whole career, the two things that have mattered are being independent, being driven by a sense of what's going on inside me, by the purpose that I feel like is being unfolded in my own life, and then also building community or a caravan around that. I make this music not knowing if anybody's ever going to listen to it. I've never had a big corporate sponsor. I've never been backed by a big music machine, by the music industry. I make the music that me and my partners feel inside of us and say the things that matter. And then the people that are attracted to that music, they're there because they feel it on a heart level. So it's a really beautiful thing to be seen and to see them and to be witnessed and to witness them and to share a bond with them. But then also their bonding together allows for people to connect based on something that really is coming from the core of who we are. And it's a beautiful thing. So it has this dual purpose of when we do shows and when we release things, that a community of people come around it and they buy tickets. And then that allows me to keep doing what I'm doing independently, but it also creates an opportunity for us to connect. And I just learned in the pandemic that I can't rely on that the way that I did for 20 years. You know what I'm saying? But also there's an opportunity on these platforms to use this technology to do what we can in lieu of being in space with each other. And we have to be, our bodies have to be in space with each other. But when we can't do that, we can use these platforms to foster a sense of connection, of a sense of community. And so if you go to brotherali.com, you go to an area called Join, and that's the caravan. What we have there is something that's similar to Patreon. We use a different platform that's not set up the same way, something that we thought was a little more to our situation, worked better for us. But there are different tiers there. So the first one, you contribute a small amount, and if a number of people do it, it goes a long way in helping to cover our costs, And so for that, you get these episodes early, and you get them without these long ad breaks of me going on and on about these things that I like to promote. The second tier is a little bit more of a contribution, but you get immediately what you get when you sign up for that one and commit to that one is that you get a 1 hour plus, I think, oral history of my first project, the beginning of my career when I made the Rites of Passage demo tape that I brought to Rhymesayers that started my whole career. You get that. You also get digital gift bags throughout the year. So at certain times throughout the year, we have songs that we made that we're not going to release to the public. We have content from these podcasts that we might not release to the public. There's also a special Ask Me Anything episode of the podcast that you get on a regular basis where you get to ask me anything, and those won't be, published along with the podcast episodes. Those are just for that tier. The third tier gets all of those things, but also gets an exclusive T-shirt that isn't available in this particular colorway. But really what that one is, and I'm not going to lie to you, it's $100 a month. It's no joke. It's an investment. But what we have there, that's my favorite part of this, is a Slack channel, a private Slack channel where people can communicate. And we is limited, because we want it to be intimate. And so without even announcing it, just from people looking around the website, these amazing supporters have already started joining. And what we're seeing is that those relationships are really being fostered, and so that's a tier and a very particular experience that allows people to make a very serious investment in what we're trying to build here. You know what I mean? So no pressure, no expectations. The podcast episodes are free for everybody. We're going to post them. You don't have to contribute anything. But for those who really feel like they want to be invested in this thing and that they want to be part of the caravan and the community that's built around this thing, this is a way that you can really, really support and be a part of it. So head to brotherali.com, go to the section called Join, and join the caravan. your voice. I know you talk a lot about the voice, and because partially because I don't see very well, but like I'm particularly drawn to people who have unique voices, and what you say about the voice not just being the sound that comes out of the hole, but connected to the soul. I mean, that's such an important reality. The Muslims believe that that God never repeats himself in creating. So there's no two people alike.
That's right.
And so the ones that the closer a person is to God, the less they're performing, the more they're just with God. And so they get they get very unique. Like those people allow their uniqueness to be, even if they're not doing it intentionally, and voice is one of the ways that really happens, and,
Wow.
yeah, it's the adhan, like when the Muslims call on the speaker on the top of the mosque, Allahu Akbar, like the call to prayer that you hear where Muslims are, that was given to an enslaved African that was a companion of the Prophet Muhammad, to Bilal, that was given to people in dreams, and he was the person to do that call to prayer. And so in Turkey, if you go to Hagia Sophia, if you go to the Blue Mosque, if you go to Suleymaniye, any of these mosques, you see Allah in calligraphy, and then you see Muhammad, and then you see the 4 caliphs that came after. But on the tower where the adhan is called, you always see Bilal al-Habashi, the African. His name is placed there prominently. And the people thought that it was because his voice had a beautiful sound. But there's a story about the Prophet Muhammad ascending into paradise. And when he was in paradise, he heard footsteps in front of him. And he asked the angels, like, who are those footsteps I hear? And they say, that's Bilal al-Habashi. And so when he came back, he had all these conversations with Bilal. But that voice, being the reminder of God, being the lighthouse, that light is transmitted from hearts before the eyes or before any of these, and the light that's in the heart of a person, being their specific voice, is something that you've spoken about so beautifully. And even if you think about Dr. Cone, like he had one of the most amazing, the particulars of the faith. The particular sounding brass and tinkling silver.
No, man, Cole, he was up there with Eddie Kendricks and those falsetto brothers in terms of his speech. I remember the first time I heard him speak was in Cambridge. And I had read his books and things, and man, he got up there with that high voice. He reminded me a little bit of Huey Newton, because Huey Newton had a real high voice. And the objective contradiction in this situation is, I said, dang, Huey, this ain't no Barry White situation, man. He's way up there. I said, oh, Lord.
And like a little bit of a bite to it. Sure, she
exactly. But again,
the dog system.
Falls back on this. It falls back on the anthem of black folk is lift every voice, is not lift every echo. You can't find your voice. You can't be a jazz musician or a blues singer without finding your voice and transforming the imitation into innovation and creation. And that's part of the process of all human beings across the board. It's just that voice becomes so central when you have very little control over anything else. You can't control your land, can't control your territory, you can't control your structures, can't control your institutions. Can't control your educational system. Or what do you have left other than your body outside of the labor force? When you can get away, your body's still yours. And then the voice that flows from that body that can be as free in silence or free in expression. And so the centrality of the human voice becomes so important in terms of the black musical tradition. I think one of the reasons why the black musical tradition is, for me, the greatest modern tradition of artistic creativity and spiritual fortitude and moral action is because it is so candid about the catastrophes coming at us. The trauma, the terror, the hatred, the oppression coming at us, and the voice became the major countervailing force. The major countervailing force. And as the world more and more acknowledged that it had the blues, it began to behave more like a blues people. The nuclear catastrophe, ecological catastrophe, the economic catastrophe, that began to visit itself more and more, even on the vanilla sides of town. There's always been class struggles among white folk and Europeans and so forth, you see. But given the Europeanization of the world, white supremacy was its public face, even though predatory capitalism was driving it. It was a public face that we black folk, we got predatory capitalism, and we got the white supremacy, we got the hatred, and we got the exploitation. Indigenous peoples have had it too. They've got rich voices, but they were not able to seize center stage in the formation of the American empire the way black culture was, you see. And that's because of the attempts to marginalize and create these separate, isolated reservations and so forth, where we're incorporated as enslaved people. We're incorporated as Jim Crow and Jane Crow people, as hated people. We still very much incorporated in the system, so that the black culture becomes very, very central. And then as the world is Americanized, given the American empire after 1945 especially, the Soviet empire with its own repressions and so forth didn't have the cultural impact that the American empire had. So that the cultural exports of the American empire, very much black exports. American music, very much deeply black influence and inflicted, see. And so now that we are in a global situation in which the American empire is eroding, declining, decaying, and these black voices and the tradition of the black musical figures having disproportionate impact on the whole world. I mean, hip hop is the greatest, or one of the last stages of the black musical tradition. Is probably the greatest cultural force among the younger generations. You see. And it's always like that civil war taking place on the battlefield of our souls. Hip hop is a site where you got all of the the thuggish and the gangsterish and the hedonistic and narcissistic and market-driven expressions. And then you got Chuck D, Brother Ali, Talib Kweli, Missy. I mean, you got some Rhapsody. I mean, we can go on and on of figures who are prophetic representations and representatives of the great black musical tradition.
Were you able to check out the clip I sent you of Amir Suleiman performing with Robert Glasper yesterday?
No, I went through all of your songs, but I didn't see that one. Wow.
Amir Suleiman is...
I want to see that.
I believe Amir Suleiman to be the greatest poet of my generation.
Oh, no, I got to see that, though, brother.
Yeah.
I got the one with you, Forrest Whitaker. Oh, Lord, that just took me. I mean, and I'd seen a number of them, but I was levitating. But I didn't get a chance to see that one, though. No, I didn't. I'm glad you mentioned that.
I would really love for you to meet Amir. Amir Suleiman is incredible.
God Almighty. But brother, I'm praying for you there in Istanbul, Turkey, because we do miss you in the American empire, man. One of our brothers, our fellow comrades, are part of the cloud of witnesses in the American empire, and your artistic work continues to have impact on it. But I'm just so glad that you are where you are in light of what you want to do, given your calling.
There's part of me. There's part of me that's looking in the mirror and saying, "You're running away." That's accusing myself of desertion. And I know James Baldwin spent a lot of time in Istanbul. They talk about him in Paris, but he was in Istanbul off and on for 10 years. And, exactly. So I've been reading No Name in the Street and things like that. And I think he finished Another Country while he was here.
Absolutely. But Istanbul in some ways is probably more important than Paris.
For Baldwin, I really believe that's true. Yeah, and it's yeah. There's. I really felt and still feel a deep need to heal. Since I've been here, part of what I've really realized is, taking me out of that environment and allowing me to witness myself and my inner states and things in this environment. I've just learned things about myself that I couldn't when I was there. One of them is just I just realized how much I cared about my non-physical self, but had no love for this body. And I didn't realize it until. Are you familiar with a therapist named Resmaa Menakem?
No.
He wrote a really amazing book called My Grandmother's Hands. He works with trauma specifically. My Grandmother's Hand is about individual and also racialized trauma in people.
Wow.
Really amazing.
I've got to read.
He actually did, we did some sessions with him, me and my son and I did together, with him. And one of the things that he really insists upon talking about with relationship, specifically to race, is the relationship with our bodies. And I realized that my intellect, my character, my friendships, my talent, my, spiritual self, all this stuff, I feel good about all of that. But those are the things that I learned. Whereas like my body is connected to the problem. My body, and these are thoughts that you have that you don't necessarily realize consciously, until you're out of the situation, you're able to see, So, I've lost 40 pounds since I've been here. And
is that right?
When
you look wonderful, but then I thought you looked wonderful in America before you left. So
it's because your eyes are wonderful. That's because your eyes are wonderful. Have you ever considered living outside? I know you visited places, and I know that you used to take a lot of trips to visit Zaytun in Germany. Have you ever lived outside of America?
No, I never have. I almost moved to Ethiopia in the early 90s. I almost moved to Ethiopia for good. I was really thinking of leaving the country. And actually, when I wrote the introduction to Keeping Faith in the first edition, I basically talked about on leaving America. But I never followed through on that. I just didn't want to be that far from Mom and Dad and Cliff and Cynthia and Cheryl and things, Because when I take a vacation, for me, that means going to Sacramento and having a good time with my brother and sisters and Mom and Dad and things. So I hardly even take vacations, So I'm probably actually in need of what you've been able to do, which is to get some distance from the intensity of the pace in the American empire. And the pull is always so intense, as you know. You know what I mean? It's just it's a constant struggle, and people pushing you this way and that, and people request and demands and so forth. And when you highlight the sacred needs, especially of others who are struggling and suffering, you don't have enough time. And I wish I had time. And I think it's very important to take time. I'm glad that you are taking time, because you are one of the anointed ones, as my brother would put it. He's not deacon, Shiloh Baptist Church. So he's got some spiritual authority that the church acknowledged. I knew he always had it. I didn't have to wait for the church to give it. But you're one of the few anointed ones, though, man. So I'm glad to see it. Now, how long have you been there now?
We've been here for a little over a year.
Oh, okay. So it's less than 12 months, huh?
Just a little over, yeah.
Just a little, it's more than a year.
Yes, sir.
A little over a year.
Yeah, maybe about 14 months. We just got approved for another year of residency in this blessed place, and
that's beautiful. God, it seems longer than that for some reason.
Well, we were going through a period where we saw each other a lot, and then I think when I started, studying with the Imam Zaid and my teachers now, I think that's when we stopped seeing each other. I haven't hugged you in a few years now.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we were talking about you in this wonderful gathering they have in Canada of Muslim brothers and sisters, and many of our dear brothers from Berkeley were there. And one gave a keynote, and then I gave a presentation, another gave a keynote, and we ended up talking about Brother Ali. It was a beautiful thing. It was
I hear from people all the time. So I have a Quran teacher here who grew up in South Africa and Boston both, and he took a course with you. And I was studying with him. Like, he teaches me to recite the Quran properly and memorize it. And he said, I forgot how your name came up, but he said, I took a class with Dr. West one time. He said, you know what? He actually asked me if I knew you. But I hear that from so many people. And, I have to really say that, knowing you is one of the great honors and pleasures of my life. I really believe you to be one of the lighthouses of God. And, in the Islamic tradition, evil is really related to darkness. It's just the absence of light. It doesn't have power of its own. It's really just a deprivation. It's a deprivation of ultimately the memory of God, and then also of light. And so, when it only takes a little bit of light, to eradicate darkness. It doesn't take much, But then there are some special ones in each age that are the intimate of God, and a lot of times the way that's borne out and witnessed by others is that those people just become lighthouses. And you're one of the walking reminders of God in our time. And you really are our national treasure. And I just pray that God give you a long life of ease and health, and that, and in these moments of losing people, and, that your mother transitioning, and we pray for her as well, for her soul, and for your brother. But I just really pray that you really know that no matter how bad things seem, imagine how bad it would be if we didn't have you. Imagine how messed up we would be. Imagine if nobody ever asked me the question, do you love those people that you perform for? Imagine if all of these students of yours and all these people, even some of them have turned against you. And I've watched that some of the people that you've helped have turned against you, and they've critiqued you, and
God bless them. God bless them.
God bless them all.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you are in the world of spirituality, in the world of what's right and wrong, the life of the mind, the life of the heart, the life of spirit. I mean, we have Muhammad Ali, and we have you.
God, my brother, I tell you, I love you to death, and I pray for you regularly, and it's just a joy to know that you're in the world, man. It's a joy to know. Lord, Lord.
Please let Zaytun know if she comes through here, she got an uncle.
Oh, indeed, I will.
I really regret. I don't know if you remember. I texted you one time. I was playing in SAC, and I texted you and I said, "Hey, would it be strange if I just took flowers to your mom? Like, I've never met her, and she probably has no idea who I am." I said, "Would it be strange?" And you texted me back, "No, go!" And you sent the address and everything. But I didn't get it until I was already headed to the airport to head out. But so I never got to do that.
No, you would have got a West hug that you remember for the rest of your life. So even when I hug you, that's probably her hugging you as well. But you would have got the real thing from Irene B. West. You know what I mean? Yeah, no, she would have known right away. Now there is a very special brother with a very special spirit, a very special calling and talent that he uses in a special way.
I could very easily talk to you all day. I know, because we've done it, but I don't want to hold you. I want to. You've been you're always.
I don't even know what time it is now. What is?
What people always say?
It's 5 o'clock.
People say, does he really talk like that? And I'm like, there was a time where I would text you when you first got a cell phone. I would text you maybe over the course of a month. I would just text you stuff when I thought about it, and then you'd call me and we'd catch up on it. And I remember one time you called me at like 3 a.m. I was on tour, so I was up. We were both up. I think you texted me like, "Are you up?" Which is funny because people do that when they want to go visit each other for sex. You up? but you sent me a call, a text, and I'm so happy your neighbor's on the phone, because if it came up and my wife saw it, we'd have another talk, right? But it just said, he said, "You up?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm up." And you called me and we talked, and I got off the phone. I said, Doc is the same guy at 3 a.m. that he is on stage, that he is, in the classroom, that he is on Bill Maher. And the other thing is that, you talking about the caravan and the love train, everybody sends you their love. So Imam Zayd sends you his love. Yasin Bey, the Most Deaf, sends you his love. So many of the people that I know, that, tell him I love him so much. He's the best. Chuck D sends his love. All these people.
So those are love warriors. When we are blessed to receive their love, we know that even though we're never perfect, pure, pristine, we are on the right path. Mm-hmm. That's the beautiful thing. You know what I mean? Brother, thank you so much for this, man.
You beyond words.
Thank you.
I love you beyond words. I can't wait to see you.
All
right, take good care. Thank you so much to the great Dr. Cornel West for sharing himself, his time, his spirit, his energy, his insight. Just really very, very grateful. It's one of the just tremendous joys of our time that we get to live at the same time and witness somebody like Dr. Cornel West. So we're very appreciative of him and his family for being so generous. Want to give a special rest in peace to his beloved mother, the great Irene B. West. Make sure to like and share and subscribe, all of that stuff that people say on podcasts. It really does help. Now that I have one, I realize, you make these episodes because you want to add something good to the world. There's a lot of arguing going on. There's a lot of, deep division going on. What we're trying to do here is share stories that can provide some hope, that can provide some healing, that can provide a sense of connection and a chance to tell the truth. And so we would like for that to spread. And we would like for people that would enjoy it and benefit to know about it. And so when you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification, rate, all of that good stuff, it really goes a long way. Special shout out to our sponsors, to Zakat Foundation and to Roots Birth Center and Vice Gerent and to UPF. Don't forget to go to brotherali.com. And so you can get down with the tour that's coming to your area very soon, the Travelers Tour. In the event section, go to join the caravan. Go to the offering session and get the merch. Want to give a special shout out to Amna Mirza, Mansoor Panawala, DJ Last Word, Amir Rahman. Special shout out to Ant, my man who produced the song The Travelers, and he allowed us to use that music as the theme song for this podcast. Also special shout out to Darian Washington, and a special thank you to our brother Mark at Medina, who made the stamp logo for this podcast. The Travelers Podcast is produced by my dear friend and brother, the great producer and DJ and organizer and dad and husband and just all around awesome dude and dear friend of mine, Brendan Kelly, a.k.a. BK1. If you saw me tour for the first 10 years of my career, BK1 was the guy on the turntables, and he is the producer for this amazing podcast. The Travelers Podcast is a production of Travelers Media. Thank you for coming, and we will see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.